So I've decided to do a series of videos interviewing people who have moved down either full-time or part-time into Mexico from the States or Canada, and really tell the stories of other people who've done it already so that you, the viewer, can see that it's not impossible, that it's actually pretty easy to move to Mexico and see the stories of the people who've done it already. So I've got Bert with me today, and he's the first one in this series. So let's meet Bert and hear his story of how he ended up in Mexico. Let's just start with your journey to get here. Maybe a little bit of your background. What were you doing before you moved to Mexico?
The last thing I was doing was I was running a philanthropy in Los Angeles. Having a great time helping my community. In the end of the 90s, near the end of the 90s, I went down for a long weekend with a buddy of mine, a couple of buddies actually, to Los Cabos. Never had been here before. Came down, liked it, had a great time. Said, I think I'll come back, which I did, and I went to a place called Todos Santos. Met a friend who owned a hotel there and had a great time and was charmed by the place. As my friend said, looking around, they said, this is Malibu 50 years ago. Get in on it early. And that kind of struck a chord with me. So I started coming down regularly, staying at my friend Brad's hotel in Todos Santos, and loved it. It was surfers, stoners, hippies, artists, people that of my kind. And had a wonderful time, beach, great food, great people, and most of all, great light and just a great vibe. It's very calm and tranquilo down here, as they say, tranquil and lovely. And I think in the back of my mind decided, I'm going to start to figure something out. So I first bought a small little ranch property in Pescadero, which is right outside of Todos Santos, with plans to develop that, which I never did. But along the way, I invited other people to come in and split up the land and created a community, a very nice community. I also realized that I didn't want that many people. It was too late in the game. And quite honestly, I found that Todos Santos Pescadero was a little too far from civilization, in the sense that I had to go every week down to Cabo, which was about a 30, 40 minute, maybe longer drive to buy my groceries. And at that point in time up there was not the services there are today. So along the way, I was driving around looking for places. Cabo didn't appeal to me, I must be honest. And I discovered San Jose del Cabo, and I was smitten immediately and started to look around. It had all the things I wanted. Close to the airport, it had some basic infrastructure, and it was just a beautiful, quiet town, very original. Old style. It's the county seat of the Los Cabos. Los Cabos means of the Capes, and it speaks of the two towns. One is Cabo San Lucas, which most people know as Cabo. That's the party town. And the other town that I live in, which is 20 miles away, is called San Jose del Cabo. And that's the quieter, more arty town. They refer to it as Cabo's pretty sister. The joke is, they say, if Cabo is hysterical, San Jose is historical, and that's pretty accurate. So I started looking around, looking at places, kept coming back, looking, staying at local hotels, and really started falling in love with this beautiful small town. And waited, and around 2006, 2007, I think just about when the market crashed, I reached out and bought the place that I'm in now for essentially the cost of an expensive used car. And then started coming regularly for a while. Actually, for 5 years, I didn't come. I just put a key in the door and paid my monthly HOA and paid a property manager to look at it every month. And eventually, 5 or 6 years later, started coming down regularly, come down for holidays, then for long weekends, then for long weeks. And before I knew it, I said, this is where I belong. And started to make plans very logically to move here. And it was the best move I ever made. So I'm retired now, retired in spring, summer of 2018. 2-3 years ago, I had the place refurbished entirely from top to bottom because it hadn't been really done. Anything hadn't been done to it since it was first built in 1984. And so where I'm at today is I've got, I think, a lovely place. It's very inexpensive. They just raised the HOA, the monthly HOA, $10 to $200 a month. And that includes 22 cable television stations, water, trash, the pool, the gardens, the gates, the security, which is really not necessary, but it's nice to have. And that's my life now. Very honestly, my life is incredibly inexpensive. As I say, I pay $200 a month for my HOA, which includes everything. I pay about $260 a month for my insurance. I think I pay $12 for my pills, my medical, that. And then it's $25 a month for my TV and my internet. It's about $40 a month for my electricity. And I think that's it. Oh yeah, $10 for Netflix. And I don't know, that's about it. Food is inexpensive, plentiful, lovely, fresh. And as I tell people, it's hard to spend money down here. It has all the infrastructure I need. We call it Gringolandia, somewhat derisively, but it really is the best of both worlds. I land, somebody picks me up, we can go to Walmart, we go to Home Depot, we can go to Applebee's, I can go to Carl's Jr., McDonald's, all the good and bad of the US and Canada is right here and within arm's reach. It's hard to spend money, as I said, which is a great feeling. After I grew up in New York, I spent 32 years in New York and then 34 years in LA. I can tell you what I paid for a month for my nice apartment in Los Angeles covers my HOA for about a year and a half, 2 years. So it's a wonderful place. Why did I move here also? Well, like most people, the weather. It's incredibly beautiful all the time. If you look outside the window or go outside, it's always a nice day. The local expression is no bad days, and I tend to agree with that. Also, it's a resort community, which means the people that come are happy. Like most people, you come for your week or your 2 weeks a year, and you're in a great mood. So I wanted to be around a place where everybody's happy all the time. The locals are wonderful human beings. They're kind, polite, caring. They believe in the same things I do, which is family and respect, and they show it every day. And it's just an easy place to live. I love it here. I encourage you to come down and take a look. The prices are still relatively reasonable compared to the United States or Canada, actually very reasonable. So I was really hesitant about buying land and putting roots down here, but I did my homework. The good news is it's a pretty developed community now. When you buy it, there's a government process. You have to use what's called a notario, which is a lawyer that's sanctioned by the state, and he's also a notary, a notario, and he's the person who handles the transactions with the government, so there's no problem. You put money in escrow, they take care of it, they take out the fees. Is it a long process? Yes, it takes months. Welcome to Mexico. But the end result is you have a secure place. The way it works here, it's called a fideicomiso, which is an end around, so to speak, but a legal end around. 35 miles from the ocean, foreigners are not allowed to buy and own land. However, Mexico, about 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago, started something called a fideicomiso, which is a bank trust, which allows foreigners to own land through a bank trust. In theory, the bank owns the land, but you direct the trust. The trust is for 50 years, and it's renewable on and on. And that's the way most of us live down here. You pay your fidio. It's about $464 a year to have it renewed through your bank. And it's the same as direct ownership. I've been doing this for years, secure as can be. In the process, I've bought and sold places, no problem whatsoever. About real estate, it continues to appreciate. So if you do buy, and you do want to get out a couple of years later, it's pretty easy and you'll make a profit. I'm not suggesting that you should focus on that, but it's a nice feeling to know that when you decide to leave, which I don't, by the way, I plan to end it here in a nice way, you can get out, and people do. Talk about getting out and getting in. Let's talk about transportation. One, there are flights both from Canada and the United States, from all over, from direct flights from New York, from Chicago, Boston, the list goes on, of course, the West Coast. The bulk of the people that live and come down here are from the West Coast of the United States and Canada. Many, many flights. I think there are about 12 to 14 flights a day from Los Angeles alone. I've been able to fly down in the morning and fly back in the evening the same day. Pretty easy. $200, sometimes cheaper round trip. Easy peasy. There are 4 or 5 major airlines that come every day. In fact, JetBlue just added some flights. I'm living in San Jose del Cabo. As I said before, there are 2 towns, San Jose, and 20 plus miles away down the corridor is Cabo San Lucas. Each are reachable via Uber. It's a few dollars to get around town here. It's about $10 to $15 to go from Cabo to San Jose and vice versa. Easy, simple and easy. Truthfully, I find there's no need to go to Cabo. Everything I need is here, and it's either walkable or a few dollars away. Transportation is easy. It's a lot. I'm happy to have, at my point of life, to have somebody pick me up and take from point A to point B rather than driving. I'm too old. I go out to eat all the time. It's such a great place. It's almost cheaper to go out to eat than it is to cook, and a hell of a lot easier too. There are 200 plus restaurants, and this is a competitive restaurant town, which means if you're not good, you don't last. I eat out 3 to 4 times a week, easily. Give you an example. I'll go out for a steak dinner, baked potato, great salad, dessert, drinks for me means iced tea. And the whole thing is probably $22 to $25 with tax and tip. You can eat for cheaper.
So Bert mentioned not having a car, which is great if you're in Cabo San Lucas or San Jose del Cabo. But if you're in between, which is where a lot of people live, you kind of need a car. And quite frankly, it's kind of unpleasant to drive between these 2 places. In the towns, they're like old Mexican towns and they're really nice, but in between is like a super highway.
All right, let's talk about the one little, and I say little negative. It gets really hot in the summer. I define that as by the end of June until the end of September, early October. It can be blisteringly hot, and it gets more humid as the summer goes along. By the end of August, beginning of September, it's an oven and the air gets unstable. That's when we get the hurricanes or the rains. And they come once a year for a couple days, and that's it. But when it does come, it's wet, it's windy, and it's wild. Every couple of years there's a hurricane that comes in. Last year there was one hurricane, one evening. It was wild, 80 to 100 mile an hour winds. So like most people down here, I have what they call hurricane shutters, which you pull and close when the winds really come in. But outside of a couple months, when I go away for the summer and hide out somewhere else, it's lovely down here. In the summer, I sneak off to Europe. So this summer is another grand tour. It's Paris, Valencia, the Canary Islands, Lisbon, Berlin, Vienna, Budapest, Bratislava in Slovakia, where else? Paris, London, Amsterdam, and Madrid, somewhere in there. I'm very lucky because I save a lot of money spending most of my time down here. As I said, I'm traveling all the time, though I still have an address in the States. I kind of see this as my base camp now, and travel about every 4 to 6 weeks. It's really easy because it's a 2-hour flight to LA, and from there that's a major airport. It's also less than 2 hours to Mexico City, another incredible place which I spent some time this winter in, which is also an international airport where you can fly also from.
Bert just mentioned that he's one of the luckiest guys in the world, and there's a heck of a lot more story to the rest of his life, but this is a wonderful place that he's ended up in, plus all those other travel destinations, and you can do it too. So that is really the message that I want to get across in this video series by interviewing different people. So please mention, or down in the comments, please let me know what questions I should be asking these folks as I go about asking different folks. I'm in Cabo now. I'll be definitely doing this in La Paz and in different parts of Mexico. And if I've got other videos from this series, you're going to find them up here right now. But otherwise, hasta luego.